Okay, so you've mastered the basic premise of tea and consent, but you still have questions. For example, how do you prove, after someone has come round for a cup of tea, asked you to make them tea, and thanked you for the lovely tea, that any of that actually happened? The answer is, you can't. You see, tea and consent are guidelines to improve society, not a protection for the individual. The fact is, there is no safe tea. Imagine someone comes round your place and says, "I fancy a cup of tea." And you say, "Certainly," while you're actually thinking, "Yay, I'm finally going to make tea for someone else." So you brew the tea, get out the fine china and ask for their preferences. They then drink the tea and ask for a biscuit. Now the important bit is you didn't force them to drink the tea. Actually, they asked for another cup and you were a bit tired, but said, "Of course." You brewed the tea, got them a new setting, and you brought them 2 biscuits. Now, and this is the important bit, you didn't force them to drink the tea or eat the biscuits. So they drink the tea, eat the biscuits, and thank you for a lovely time, and leave. You're exhausted and think, "Wow, that's what tea is all about." Then you take a long nap and don't hear from them again. You're a modern and highly evolved person. You don't call round or ask after them because clearly this is how they want things to be. Then you're on social media and you find that they're sharing pictures of themselves having tea with other people. Lots of other people. You start to get worried. You go and get yourself tested, but you remain quiet and make no comment. Your tests come back negative and you think, "Phew, thank goodness, tea wasn't worth that kind of stress." So you find a good book to read. And then there's a knock at the door. And you're thinking, what if it's them and they want tea? How do I handle that? You needn't have worried. It's the police. They're here to question you about an act of forcible tea, but only after they beat you about the head and shoulders. You're charged with forcible tea and resisting arrest without violence. When you finally see a lawyer, you're informed that the person who had 2 cups of tea with you had spoken with a friend of theirs. When asked, they told their friend, I think it was their first time making tea. And their friend said, "How was it?" And they said, "Meh." And their friend said, "That's against the law." And they said, "But I told them I wanted the tea and I drank the tea." And their friend said, "Because you felt bad for them. That's not consent, that's coercion." And they said, "Really?" And their friend said, "Yes, it is. I know because I watch lots of police dramas on television. You need to file a report." And they said, "You know what? You're right. That tea was terrible." So there you are. Your first time making tea for someone else. You followed the rules and now your attorney is asking you, can you prove that they consented? And you stare at the attorney in disbelief. You're facing prison, your name on a registered tea offenders list after you get out. All because someone decided a week after they had tea with you that you weren't very good at it. Then you ask, how am I supposed to prove that? That's when your attorney asks, did you see the video on YouTube about safe tea? And you said, I watched the one where they explain consent. Oh, so you missed the important one. The one where you each retain an attorney and fill out a pre-consent agreement to define the divisions of the associated expenses of and the acceptable forms of documentary evidence of consent, the documentation of the act and the retention costs of such documentation to comply with the statutory period in which claims may arise. And you said, what? And your attorney says, it's very simple. Each of you brings your own attorney. You fill out a G7431/C47 pre-consent form to be registered with the clerk of the court. Then, if you lack the financial means for a commercial monitoring service, 3 UN peacekeepers and a videographer will be sent to observe and record any occurrences and supply affidavits to a court reporter as to their opinions as to the status of consent and its withdrawal in any and all interactions. This will be transcribed, notarized and registered with the court. And you say, but I thought... And your attorney says, I know. You thought if everyone agreed and there was consent at the time, you were fine. I'm sorry, that's not the case. That first video was all about being a criminal and using specious claims of implied consent to force people to have tea. The second video is the practical approach for living in a reality television, social media-obsessed society, where mental illness is expanding and personal responsibility is all but non-existent. In this world, you're presumed guilty without incontrovertible proof of your innocence. And you say, "What?" And your attorney says, "I had a case where the person never met their accuser or prepared tea for anyone, including themselves." Really? Yes, we didn't have proof of where they were when the event was alleged to have occurred. What happened? They were convicted until later when the NSA was forced to release documents of their monitoring of my client, which showed my client had spent the entire day alone at home. Wow! So what should I do now, you ask? Hope that the NSA was recording your cell phone, computer and appliances and captured the entire exchange before, during and after tea, your attorney says, and then leaves. So this is the important bit. Never force anyone to drink tea. And this is the even more important bit. Recognize there is no safe tea ever. People just aren't smart enough or honest enough to have tea, which means you should get a hobby and timestamp record for every minute of your life. Just make sure your hobby isn't one that anyone will find objectionable, like making cartoons. Because if you make cartoons that offend people, they might say nasty things, make false claims to officials, or try to kill you. Which just goes to show people aren't smart enough or honest enough for most things. Tea. It's a bad idea. Really.